let's go.
Audio Jungle.
Yeah. I really got the feeling today
Audio Jungle.
that everything is going my way. Now this is what I'm talking about.
Audio Jungle.
Every time I see your smile, it makes me shout. Let's go!
Audio Jungle.
Let's go! Nothing's gonna stop us today.
Audio Jungle.
Get on the bus or get out the way. We're cruising with the radio on.
Audio Jungle.
So turn it up to 10. Here comes our favorite song. Let's go!
Audio Jungle.
Let's go! Let's go!
Audio Jungle.
Let's go!
Yes, let's go. It's another Tuesday, and you know that every Tuesday it's IoT Tuesday. Welcome to the show. My name has always been Samuel Adrani. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the winning project, which we posted out on Twitter to ask you of what system to build as our first project for the series in 2020. You have spoken, I've listened. So in today's episode, when we come back, we're going to look at which of the projects won, and then we're going to dive into the tools and the kits and the sensors and how the whole project is going to look like when we come back. Okay, we are back. So let me take you to the results. So you spoke and I listened. So I asked on Twitter that which of this project should we build on IoT Tuesday show, since we mentioned that for 2020 is going to be a project-based show, and you spoke and we listened. You said that we should start with the home environment monitoring system. So that is what we're going to build. Now, and the second project was the air quality system. And then third is the drinking bot. And the last was a smart guarding. And I was surprised that a lot of people thought that the smart guarding wasn't that important to them. But hey, it is what it is. You've spoken, I've listened, and that's what we're going to build. The good thing is that part of the air quality system is going to be found in the home environment monitoring we're going to build, because in the house we want to monitor the air quality, humidity, and all that, which will translate into. So it looks like we're going to be doing probably a two-in-one project, because some basis of the home environment monitoring system will come in play. However, for my friends who like to do the drinking with me and the beer with me, if you want to make the time, we can still build the drinking board in our spare time every weekend. So hey, it's up to you. But in the meantime, let me take you to the bench. But before I take you to the bench, there is actually some awesome news. So for my friends in Ghana and Nigeria, and very soon other parts of the continent, there is a shop coming to town that will make it easy for you to purchase your sensors, your microcontrollers. You think about it. It's called the Geek Store. Yes, the Geek Store. Something really huge is happening. So keep watching this space, keep following me on social media. I'll be throwing it out there to let you know when the store comes live in Nigeria and in Ghana in the next couple of weeks. So that is the big one. Now, since we chose to build since we chose to build the home monitoring system, sorry for me to adjust the camera for a bit. So, since we chose to build the home monitoring system, there are few things we need to consider. So, in today's episode, even though we might not see a lot of coding or a lot of stuff going on, we're going to look at some of the tools, some of the hardware, some of the things. So we're going to talk through the process, and then after that, we'll start. We'll dive into it and get stuff running. So let me get my let me take you to the bench. right now. Okay, awesome. So this is what we have here in the bench. Actually, for today's, let me move to this view to make it a lot easier. Um, so we can see an area of stuff going on, going on here on the bench right now. I'm going to walk through all of them so we kind of see the things that we will be using. All of you watching, thank you for watching. If you can just give me a thumbs up on any of the platforms you're watching on to make sure sound is okay, picture quality is okay, we're not dropping any frames, I would really appreciate it. And as I do on most of the stream, I will give away something today as well. Last week I gave out the Intel Edison kit. Today I think I have an Arduino Uno to give out. So for anyone who is interested, just tweet at me or reply with what you think of the show and what you want to see being done on the show, and then I'll put you into a draw and send you out with an Arduino Uno. All right, so awesome, good. So we mentioned that. So for the home automation system, a few things we need to take into consideration, um, which is let me talk a few about this before we get there. So for the home automation system, depending on the number of rooms or how big your house is, you might need to be thinking about a mesh network. And the reason why I'm saying a mesh network is that you would want to collect the sensor data from different parts of the house so you can get an accurate reading. All right. But as a prototype and going off what we want to do, we will build this with just the assumption of one big room or one house, so it's understandable. But in a real situation or real deployment, if we were to build our unit into, kind of like a sensor park unit and deploy it in various spaces in the house or various rooms in the house, then what's going to happen is that all these units will be sending data to a central point, which we can then do the analytics and do whatever we want to do on it. So my big picture for doing this is um, probably having it built into something like this form factor. All right, this is a Raspberry Pi, but building it into something of this form factor with all the sensors that I can easily just mount in each of the rooms. All right, and what it's doing is that this will send up the data into our cloud. Obviously, all right, we're going to use Microsoft Azure, the IoT offerings. So it's going to send the data to my cloud to do the monitoring and all the stuff that you think of. Another way to do that is if I don't want all the individual pieces. So just to backtrack, so this will require some 3D printing. Once we model everything out, we want to put that in a nice casing. We'll come to that in a later episode of the show. Now, so another thing would be if you want to be very performance, scalable, resourceful, we wouldn't let all the various units be sending the data straight up into Azure or into our cloud offerings or wherever we're storing the data. We'll create a mesh network where all the sensors or all the kits are reporting to a central gateway or a gateway, and then the gateway will rather send the data up into the cloud for analytics or processing. So if I take you back to the bench, so so that is why you can see that we have a few of the particle boards here. So the idea is that with these particle boards, they will all have the sensors and I can deploy them because particle allows me to create a mesh network. Because particle allows me to create a mesh network, I can deploy this in the different rooms of mine, and then I would have all this data sent to the Azure Sphere. And so someone will be asking why the Azure Sphere? Azure Sphere because of its secure platform. Because Azure Sphere is more secured for me, I would want all the sensors from the various devices sent to the Sphere as a gateway, and then the Sphere do the sending to Azure and kind of like doing the analytics and all that. The big picture is that I'll be piping some of the data to this Raspberry Pi, right? So that I can actually create a local interface for myself in the house. So I kind of have like a control board, a control application, which I can build in either UWP or any of the .NET languages, or I could use Power Apps because the data is already in Azure, in IoT, Azure IoT Central, IoT Hubs. I can actually use the Power Apps to create a dashboard using Power BI and the rest of the Automate and all that and put the flow in there. So at some point of the show, we will see once we start getting data into Azure, we will see how we can use that in Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps to create some how do you call it, application that allows us to interact and monitor the home from anywhere we are in the world. And then we'll use Power Virtual Automate to create a bot-like system that we can actually interact with the various sensors in the house. It's going to sound like a very it's actually a very interesting project. And then at some point in the show, we would also see how we can connect it to like digital assistants that we have, like Alexa and Google, so that we can actually ask for information about the quality, environmental quality in our house. So let's go over it. So once we understand the big picture, so I mentioned that we'll be using either the particle board or either maybe an Arduino Uno or Mega, depending on the sensors, I mean, how many sensors I'll be using. And I must say that big ups to Seed Studio because I'll be using a lot of the Seed Studio sensors, which I already have. So I'll be using Seed Studio sensors. So I'll be going over the sensors for you in a bit so we can see what each of the sensors would do in the bigger scheme of our project. So that's just by the way. All right. So now that we have the particle mesh devices out of the way, I can push them here. Let's bring this. So we mentioned that we might use some Arduino as well at some point to get the sensors in. So I can put this also right here. Okay. So we've also talked about Azure Sphere. This is going to be our final gateway because it's secured, so we can trust that our solution has been secured, has been, tightened, so we don't have any um, bad actors trying to access our system. So that's it. Now, because we're talking about home environmental monitoring, we need a few sensors that will help us to do that. Now, um, first of it, I will mention is this. This is actually a dust or particle count sensor. Yeah, and this is a groove compatible. So what this sensor does is it it picks the particle count, the particle count or dust count in your environment. Let me see if I can bring it a bit closer to the camera for you to see this. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. All right. So it when you fix this, it's gonna just do a count, as the air is blowing and all that. It's going to pick all the particles and give you a particle count that gives you the quality of air you are breathing, in your home. So we're going to be using the particle sensor or the particle count sensor. So one, this is our first sensor here. Then we're also going to use the 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 temperature and humidity sensor. There's one variant of it. There's one variant of the temperature and humidity sensor. We'll be using this to actually, gather temperature and humidity values in our house or in the room or the environment where you want to monitor. So this is the other sensor we use. This is another variant of the temperature and humidity sensor, but this is of a higher accuracy. So similar thing, but this is of more high accuracy. So this is the second sensor we'll be using. And then we'll also be using here the UV sensor. I should get some calipers to hold this so you can see this properly by the camera. You know what? Let me see if I can bring this here. This should bring it in focus. There you go. So this is a UV sensor. All right. So we're going to use this also just to get the UV, the ultraviolet rays that, for whatever reason, whatever instrumentations or things we're using in the house is being emitted. So we're going to use the UV sensor as well. And then we're going to use also the light sensor. All right. So there are actually two variations of the light sensor. This is the version 1 and this is the version 2. This is 1.2, sorry. So depending on how you might have it in one of these forms. So this is the light sensor. You might have it in one of these forms. So you'll be asking, what are we going to use a light sensor for? So sometimes we want to know if there is too much light or too little light. All right. So the light sensor is what's going to help us monitor the amount of rays, light that is coming or the light in our rooms, is emitting. And that could even give us a lot of ideas onto how to manage it. Sometimes we can even use it to detect if there's light in another room. And I I hold on. Let me add this. Yeah, I was going to add that, but I totally yes. There you go. So let me give you a scenario. So this light sensor here, okay, can be used to determine if there is light in a room. All right. Now, if there's light in a room, we can use the motion sensor to pick if there's any motion or someone in the room. If there's no one in the room, we can turn the light off. Okay, so we're monitoring how light or how energy is being used. So even though that's not a huge thing, we can just drop that in at some point to see how that is done. Then obviously we're going to use a buzzer because sometimes you need to give a physical alert or physical response to something happening. So let's say the particle count becomes bad or there's some gaseous exposure in the house and it becomes unbearable. A combination of this, buzzing noise, and that is why we have the LED strips here. The reason I have the LED strips is that this will serve as a visual indicator because sometimes you might not have your phone with you to see what the app is saying. All right, and the only way is to have visual indicators, and that's the buzzer is one of them to sound if the particle count or your environmental numbers become uninhabitable. All right, so we're going to use also the strip LED strip to change the color to let you know in real time or like visually how your environment is doing. So something like if it's all green, you know that you are within the numbers. If it's yellow, you're like not something has to be done. And if it goes to let's say red, you know that something is happening. So that's why we have this as well. And yes, what else? Yeah, so um, this again will play a part in terms of the physical things. This is a four segment LED display. That just allows us to display some numbers, as in maybe the total numbers of the whole environment in terms of percentages as well. And um, this is a moisture sensor, but we're not going to use this because we're not doing anything smart home. But what I want to derive from this process, the way this works, to explain something that we'll need. So I'll probably have to face the camera for this and switch the view. So a couple of I think a couple of months ago, we installed a new washing machine, and yes, I did installation, but during the night, one of the pipes we use, I think, broke. So there was water spilling from the laundry room to the whole house. So there was water everywhere from my this office, the hall, the bedroom, the other. There was water everywhere. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, I had like extension boards and electric stuff on the floor. For some reason or for some miraculous reason, my circuit had tripped, so it had turned off power in the house. So that would have been a disaster. I mean, I would have just been electrocuted. My family could have been electrocuted. But thanks to whatever that miracle was, the circuit was stripped. Now, why am I saying this? So one key thing that we will build, there are off-shelf solutions for it, but we can build a very simple thing. Now, the moisture sensor works with the theory of conductivity. So we want to build a leak sensor. Now, this is the thing. Water is a good conductor of electricity, all right? So it means that if there is water and you put two electrodes in it, the conductivity is high and therefore it will beep or it will no electric like current will flow through it. So it's the same thing. So we're going to build a leak detector. And what that's going to do is that we're going to put it on the floor, all right? And with just two electrodes. So imagine this is lying on the floor, okay? Without water, it will not report anything. But the moment there's water, conductivity between these two nodes is going to be high and therefore it's going to send some values or signal. So that's why I'm repurposing this for that use case. So what that means is that we're going to have a leak detector. So if there's a water, if there's overspilling or a pipe burst or something, there's water in the floor, this would also report to us. So that's why we're using this. All right. Now, so someone will be asking what this is. Now, so this is one of the off-shelf ones I bought. It's not Seed Studio specific, but I think Seed Studio has one. So let's see if we can just focus right there. Yeah. So what you're seeing in the view right now is an infrared transceiver. Okay, it's an infrared transceiver. Now, so what an infrared transceiver does is that where is the remote? I think I threw it in the other room. Okay, so you know that all your devices have infrared. That's how they're able to communicate with air conditioners, TVs, and all that. Now, the reason why we're going to use an infrared transceiver is that now when let's say there is too much heat in the house, all right, or the house is too cold, which is going to be determined by our temperature and humidity sensor, we want to either turn the air conditioning on or off. All right, and this is how we're going to do that. I could just use an infrared transmitter to send signals to how do you call it, to send signals to the air conditioning I have in my house. It's a one brand air conditioning. All the air conditioning in my room in the house is of one brand. So when I read the values of on, off, increase, and all that, it will be the same values I'll send to all the air conditioners. So all my units will have a transceiver like this. So when the temperature gets too cold, it will turn the air condition off. If it gets too warm, it will turn it up. If there's too much of something that I need to increase or decrease, this is what is going to do the trick for me. And also, as usual, I'm not using any blinds. It's glass. My windows are sliding glass. I've not figured out how to temper it to motorize it so that if there's too much geisha stuff going on, I can easily open or close. Now, the final bits and pieces of stuff is that we might use some relays. And in the last episode, you saw me use a relay to turn on a fan. So this is a solid state relay, uh, which means there are no movable parts in this relay, as opposed to this one, which is a mechanical relay that has some moving parts. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is an eight channel relay. So and this will be using to drive things like ceiling fans, big fans in the house. We'll be using this to drive them. That's why we have that. Um, and then now to the other very important sensors we use. Some of them I have not actually even opened, but yeah, I'll just do the opening on this show because obviously I'm going to use them any which way. So let's start with this one. Let me let me grab um, let me grab a scissors right here quickly. Okay, so let's do this. All right, let's just put this somewhere here. So as you can see, this is a dust. This is also another dust sensor. Okay, right here, similar to this. So we can put this here. Um, and now what you're seeing, the next set of sensors you're going to be seeing are a bunch of different um, gas sensors. All right, they sense different things, different types of gases. So I'm just going to cut all of them. So as you can see, these are new sensors, not used, but going to be used on this show. We're going to walk through it. We're going to see how. Um, so there you go. Um, open this one. Open this one. Um, yeah, throw this out here. Throw this also out here, and I can. Okay, let's put this somewhere here. Throw this here. Throw this there. Yeah, I'm just going to open all of it. Um, yeah, let's throw this out there. And then we're going to look up the various gases that each of them senses, so that we'll better understand that. Oh well, why don't you just use one? Well, we might want to be looking at various gases. Okay, good. So um, restart now. No, 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 no. Okay, so this one here, if we look at the size, so this is MQ5. Let's see if I have a couple of MQ5s. So this one MQ5. Let's see. So this is MQ5. Okay. This is MQ4. Okay, so this is an MQ. So this is MQ4. Let's because we've already shown this, I can move them a bit back so I can line this up. So this is MQ4 here. This is MQ5. This is MQ135. This is MQ8. So this is MQ6. So MQ5, 4, 5, 6. MQ8, MQ9. This is MQ2. So this is MQ4. This is MQ2. MQ7. Where's MQ8? Yeah, so MQ6, MQ7, MQ8, MQ9, MQ3. So yeah, this is MQ2. Oh, let's bring this here so you can see it, and then we can go look at. So this is MQ3. This is MQ2. So MQ2, MQ3, MQ4, MQ5, MQ6, MQ7, MQ8, and then MQ9, and then this is MQ135. Okay, so and we can put this here. All right. So these are the various gas sensors. These are the various gas sensors that we'll be using in the project. So to understand what these are, let me take you. Let's go back to the screen. Let's go find out what each of the sensors does for us. So MQ sensors, right? So I'll just go open here. And I think these are not like really expensive. So as you can see, this is like MQ6. We don't want this. So I'm trying to see if I can get. Okay, there you go. All right. So so this is it. So we have MQ2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We even have we have 8. We have 9, and then 1, 3, 5. So let me zoom this in so you can see this properly. So right here. So this is it. All right. So for MQ2, which is this one, all right, which is this one right here. Now they may look similar, all right, but the markings, I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, they may look similar, but the markings. So for MQ2, so MQ2 is used to detect flammable gases such as LPG and propane. All right. So in the home, you want to check if there's any gas leak. MQ2 will do the work. All right. Now, if you want to check ethanol, so alcohol, if there's, let's say you want to check alcohol or something, then you're going to use MQ3. Things like methane or natural gas, you use MQ4. LPG and methane, MQ6. LPG and methane can be done with MQ5 and MQ6. MQ7 is carbonic monoxide. So as it stands, since we might not be using MQ3, MQ4, MQ2, definitely we are going to use that. MQ7, definitely we are going to use that. Maybe MQ5 or MQ6. So let me make a note here. So what will end up happening is that once we finalize on all the sensors that we're going to use for the show, in subsequent series, we'll start by saying, okay, how do you connect your MQ to, let's say, this board? And then we'll do that in a series. Then how do you connect? So we're going to learn how to connect all the various sensors to the boards in different episodes. And then now that we understand how to connect all the boards in different episodes, we'll bring all of it together in building the project. So let me make a note of this. So we'll be using MQ2. We'll be using MQ. We'll use MQ3 because I have a lot of alcohol in the house. So sorry about that. I'm having. So MQ3 will not be using MQ3. Maybe MQ4 because of the natural gases in there. And then MQ between MQ5 and 6, I'll just pick MQ5 so we can detect methane. That's the reason why I'm using it. And then we use MQ7. We use MQ7 because we want to know the carbonic monoxide in the environment, which is very toxic and very dangerous. So and it also does hydrogen, so which means we don't need MQ8. All right. However, from my experience in building some of these IoT projects, sometimes it makes sense to use dedicated sensors rather than using combo or combined sensors. So, for instance, I'd rather use an MQ8 standalone and another sensor that just that carbonic monoxide. All right, just so I know they're doing their specialty work. But for the sake of the stream, we're going to use MQ7 because it does also hydrogen. It's going to give us that part. Gaseous ammonia, that can be sometimes terrible, so we're going to use MQ 135, which we have. This is MQ 135. Like I'm saying, all the sensors look similar, but the numbers are on it to let you know what how they look like. So that's what we're going to use. All right, so now that the sensors are out of the way, all right, um let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to connect them, kind of like a schematic. So, like I mentioned, we can go between using. Okay, I can push this back here just to give space to the camera in here. So we can we can first start off by using the Arduino Uno. This has the groove shield, so we can use that. But considering that on one kit we might have multiple sensors, I might decide to go without the shield and go directly because, as you can see, these ones do not have like the groove pins, like the groove connectors on them. So we'll be using like a breadboard, something like this, and I'll be doing the connections. All right. I have a longer one. I think we have a longer one here. Yeah, let's get the longer one. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yep. So, yep, we'll be using. Let me remove this T cobbler. This is for Raspberry Pi. Okay, so things like something like this. All right, we might just connect. You might just connect them. I hope you're seeing this. They could be back to back. That's fine. Nothing, nothing fancy. Just make sure that however you connect them, we connect them in such a way that um, we have enough, we have enough room to actually pin them. Or I can use connectors like this. Okay, that allow me to do things like, connect it this way. Hopefully you can see that. So I can use some of these um, female jumper wires. I have a lot of them, so a bunch of the female jumper wires like this. This won't go into the groove shape, but there's a number of them which you can connect this way and connect onto the board, or just so that we can glue this to something that that can stay on. So that's what we'll be doing. So now that we are clear on what we're going to use, okay, what we're going to use in terms of the sensors, in terms of the kit. So I'm going to start off with how to connect it to an Arduino. That's just the basics. So you can learn how to connect the sensor to Arduino, how to read the data basically from an Arduino. We can do that also from the Agile Sphere, just like we did for the other sensors. But the only problem is that um, it's not a problem. It's actually a good challenge for us in the sense that as of now, the Azure Sphere SDK doesn't have all these libraries for all these sensors. All right, but Seed Studio and the community has. So that's the more reason why I'm saying I will use the Azure Sphere as a gateway. So whilst Arduino and the third-party devices I have send the data to the Sphere can then send and control all the other stuff, as well. So um, we need to understand the library. All right, so let's go here and look at the library. So in today's episode, we know what we're going to build. We've seen all the sensors we're going to use. In our next episode, we are going to start connecting each of the sensors, beginning with the gas sensors and then moving on to the particle sensor. So in next week's episode, I am going to show you how to connect the gas sensor to an Arduino and also to the particle mesh. So remember, we're going to be using three boards. We're going to be using the Arduino, whether the Uno Mega or the Nano, and then we're going to also use the particle mesh kit. And finally, it would go to the Azure Sphere. So things that would encourage you guys to do, if you're familiar with any of these sensors and you want to contribute to the Azure Sphere SDK, please, you're welcome to do so. We can actually port all these sensors to the Azure Sphere so that going forward, if you're using Azure Sphere, you would have the ability to, have the libraries in Visual Studio to use. So thank you for making a date with me on today's episode. I'm going to follow up with a blog post on all the sensors and a write-up of them so you know what to do. And then within the course of this week, once the data and the information is finalized, I would actually share with you information about the Geek Store where you can get all these sensors and all these kits for your upcoming project. It's always a good time and always awesome to connect with you. Thank you very much for joining. Don't forget, I still have an Arduino Uno to give away. Tweet at me, mention me, let me know what you think, and then I'll send you one of the kits wherever you are, Ghana, Nigeria, as of now. So, without much ado, thank you once more for joining the show, and let's connect next week as we begin to build and connect our sensors. Have a wonderful evening, wonderful afternoon, wonderful morning, wherever you find yourself on the continent.